Hello and welcome to the Legends and Lads Cricket Podcast. I am Chiranandan Srinath, your host for this week. Joining me is my co-host Krishna Maitreya. We couldn't have Vijay Lokapalli sir and Rakesh Rao sir on this show, but we're delighted to host a former first-class cricketer, now a cricket coach and a mentor. And something that surprises me even more is that she is a company secretary and a legal advisor as well. For those who believe that studies and cricket doesn't go hand in hand, well, she's a person who has broken that stereotype. Let me welcome Sharadha Sridharan on the Legends and Lads Cricket Podcast. Thank you, ma'am, for coming. How are you, and how does it feel to be here?
Chinandan, hi Maitreya. Thank you so much for having me, and thanks. That was a great introduction. It feels great, and I'm really happy to be here. I've seen a couple of podcasts earlier. The work done by you guys, it's simply brilliant with eminent personalities in cricket. So really thankful and humbled to be here. Thank you so much once again for having me.
Yes, ma'am. So you played a lot of first-class cricket. So take us back. How was it like being a first-class cricketer when, especially women's cricket, was not so visible? I mean, as much as it is today. And were your family and neighbors, or all the people surrounding you, were they happy, to see you venturing out into a sport that is very uncertain, that is very risky? So how did you deal with all this? How was it for you?
So, it was a great learning experience for me. I would, put it that way to summarize, my cricket experience. So, you're right. So, women's cricket in India has gone up, by several notches, like right after the 2017 World Cup. But it was not, that popular when, I was playing. Of course, the BCCI had already taken over the Women's Cricket Association. So, the matches, the exposure, the coaching, and all the facilities were there. But, not a lot of people in India knew that a women's cricket team even existed. So that was the actual scenario, during the times when, I was playing. And, of course, it was, great to have, played against a lot of experienced cricketers, a lot of international cricketers. I learned a lot of things from them. And, talking about my family, I'm very lucky enough. My family was extremely supportive of, all my dreams and aspirations. They did not, say anything against, my cricket career. They, supported me in and out. And, of course, I started with gully cricket where, I was the only girl among, 10 to 15 boys. So the neighbors, of course, there were a bit of, shock reactions from the neighbors and, from the parents of the boys with whom I had played also. So, no, and of course, it was 10 years back, it was not the same. So, a girl doing weights in the gym, a girl doing, a lot of cardio, just playing out street cricket with the boys. Now, of course, there were a lot of, challenging moments, tough moments, but, my passion for the game just ensured that, I just put it all aside and just focus on my job. Has been overall a fantastic experience.
Yes, ma'am. So my question to you will be like throughout your career, there must have been some biggest on-field memory for you that you cherish even to this day. So could you share with us that
Yeah, sure.
experience?
There was, one match where I had taken 6 wickets for 18 runs. So that was my best bowling performance. That is coming right on top of my mind. And apart from that, when we were playing against Goa, it was a match. So the match did not go in our favor, but it was a crucial game. We had to win that to qualify, but unfortunately there was a rain delay, and we had to play a super over. So in that, Goa required one run of one ball to win. So unfortunately, it was a leg by that slipped off, and we
Uh,
lost the game. So I remember that because I remember me crying a lot, sitting in the ground and crying a lot after that game, and there was a lot of disappointment, for throughout the team about that game. But we fought really hard. That's what mattered, and the learnings were immense from the team. So these two games are on the top of my
yeah.
some best.
Well, yeah. Well, my next question is, how did you balance all the studies and cricket? And I know that company secretary clearing those exams, or is doing all this big competitive exams, studying as well as playing cricket. And not just cricket that we play, some gully cricket or a school team or a district team. It is for a state, and it's very both have their own competition. So how did you deal with it physically, mentally? So talk about that.
Yeah, so Jhulan, you mentioned one word at the beginning of this podcast. So you mentioned a term called uncertainty, right? So as you had rightly pointed out, cricket or even any professional sport for that matter, once you cross the typical the school level, the college team, after that playing for a state, going for a selections, everything is uncertain. You cannot really be 100% sure that you are going to be in the team. And moreover, cricket is a team sport. So you have only, it's not like if you play well, you will be there. There are a lot of, combinations that can go for you or that can go against you. For example, if you are a spin bowler all rounder, you have, 10 other people minimum competing for your place in the team. So, it can happen even if you do your best performance on that date, you can still miss out. And of course, there is the side of, injuries, and there is also a side of the family support, everything coming in. So I felt that cricket, yes, it was extremely important. It was my passion. It is still my passion. So it was very important for me to learn and go out to study as well, because if for example I played 2 years and the third year unfortunately there is some kind of challenge for my selection due to an injury or whatever it is, it's important that I had something else to focus on for that particular time, and then come back into cricket. And that was something that I had always thought about. And of course there were a lot of mentors. Even my cricket coach, he insisted that you go and you try and make a career out of education as well, so that both will go hand in hand. And absolutely he was 100% right, because the communication skills, the knowledge that I had gained from college, or a CS degree was immense. Both came hand in hand. So something in cricket, discipline, I put into my studies. So from my studies, I learned things like communication and all those things which are helpful to cricket as well. So just to sum it up, I felt it was very, very important. And still, to whomever I coach, I tell the girls, especially at the school and the college level, to focus equally on studies, because it's a team game and you cannot be 100% sure always. There will definitely be ups and downs, and it's not at all a bad idea to have an alternate career, just to balance, so that you can make a comeback.
Yes, ma'am. So, as you have just now spoken about having that alternate path, so but there must have been some special bond with cricket, because even though you had an alternate path, after your playing days were over, you have transitioned into the coaching career. So, you speak about that, like you could have taken a step back from cricket, after your playing days, and continued into the education field, but you came back to cricket as a coach. So, what made you come back to cricket life?
Of course, the passion for the game. If there is something that I cannot let go of, it has always been cricket for me. So even after I stopped playing, few years later, I wanted to make come back into the sport. I was ready to take up anything, like probably even coaching, umpiring. But coaching is something that I thought of. It was my first thought. So I went ahead and did my coaching certifications. I completed my ICC level 1 and level 2. I recently completed my BCCA level 2 also. And, I work with the under 15 Tamil Nadu state team. So, it has always been my, dream, and it has always been my passion. Even though I stopped playing, I have always wanted to be involved with the sport, at some level, because it's a different experience altogether. It just makes every day a little bit extra special.
Yeah, and all of us know that there are so many opportunities in women's cricket nowadays, especially with the emergence of WPL. So, if you were debuting in this WPL era, Now, how different would your career have been? Like, if you were to start a career now, how do you feel your career would have been in cricket?
It would have been amazing, to work with, top most international coaches, international cricketers. You get to be in an atmosphere where you have, analysts helping you out. You have sports psychologists to support your game, proper SNCs. You have a great path. You'll be having a great, some a path, proper path as a cricketer, because you have experts, top experts working with you in different fields. So 10 years back, we had trainers, but it was not, like this specific. Nowadays, you have, SNCs, you have all the support you're looking for. You have fast bowling coaches, you have spin coaches, everything. So, for a cricketer now, if I had been a cricketer, I would have been, extremely lucky because of, the guidance I'm getting, the first one, and of course the platform. So WPL, as you said, has created a huge platform for all the women cricketers. Like, we have found very very special cricketers through WPL. We had, Asha Joy, whom I knew, who was a stalwart in domestic cricket, but her WPL performance helped her make an international debut. We had the likes of Kiran Navgire, Kranti Gaur, and all those players. So, to see them use this as, WPL as a stage, and, to make an appearance in the Indian team, it's really, really special. So, yes, unfortunate to have missed out, but still, I'm on the sidelines as a support staff.
Yes, ma'am. So, the coaching styles between men's cricket and women's cricket. So, as a coach yourself, do you think there is some difference, or both are very similar? Your take on this?
It is different because, psychologically and physically, men and women are different. So, and women cannot play the exact way that men do. We do have a lot of differences. So, to just cite an example, women cricketers, fast bowlers, they tend to, swing the ball a lot more rather than the men cricketers, because the pace is, little less. And, physically also, we have more front on, and, just to go a bit technical, we have more front on and more of, like a semi, somewhere
Mixed
between front
actions.
on bowlers. So, like, but in men's cricket, you see a lot of, side on bowlers as well. So that is a challenge because of the hip shoulder separation for women cricketers. I'm just telling you an example of, how different women cricketers are. And when it comes to batting, for certain shots, men tend to have better alignment because of their physical structure. Women, after the age of 13 or 14, when they hit puberty, so the body undergoes a lot of change. The hips, part becomes a lot weaker. So we see a lot of open stances in young women cricketers. So as, a coach, you need to understand what the girl or the woman is, going through, at what stage she is in. So, it's different. And when it comes to psychology, women, tend to behave differently. So, you can, as a coach, you can just, shout at men cricketers after a disappointing event. They won't take it that way. But when it comes to, women cricketers, you have to, have those one-on-one talks. So, that is the psychological traits that, I recently learned in my, coaching modules as well. You need to definitely treat them different. It's, the game, the rules might be, the same for both men and women, but psychologically and physically, both are different. So you have to, just customize your coaching.
I feel this episode is getting very insightful, ma'am. This is the first time we are hosting and talking about women's cricket, and it's really insightful. Yeah, moving on to the next question. Let me read out some numbers. So, the opening match of WPL 2025 attracted over 30 million viewers compared to 11.5 viewers in it was a global viewership for the FIFA Women's World Cup finals. And also, if you see, WPL is one of the highest paying leagues for women's globally. So, all these are proofs that the appetite for women's cricket is rapidly growing. So, how do you see, or where do you see women's cricket in the next 5 years? Say by 2030, where do you see women's cricket in India, especially?
Yeah, so I definitely want to see at least two World Cup trophies in our cabinet in the BCCI's office. So we have a women's ODI World Cup coming later on this year. I think the fixtures have not been announced yet, but I think it starts by the end of September. So now with the WPL, as I had mentioned earlier, a lot of young Indian cricketers are getting a chance to interact with the likes of Elise Perry, Sophie Devine, who was there in the the 2024 season, the likes of Marizan Kapp, Sophie Eccleston, who are like stalwarts, for their own countries and for their own franchises. So the girls, when they see this type of work ethics, they tend to pick up a lot. They tend to ask a lot of questions, learn a lot about how to deal with pressure. And if for a young batter, or for someone like a Vrinda Dinesh who gets to bat with the likes of Elise Perry, she definitely can learn a lot by how Elise Perry paces her innings when they bat first or when they chase. So these kinds of learnings are extremely, worth of gold, I would say, for the Indian cricketers. The bowlers can have chats with as to what length can they bowl with the new ball, how they can use angles and lot of other stuff. So with these learnings, I can definitely see the youngsters picking up a lot and trying to implement in the international games. We recently won the tri series, pretty convincingly in Sri Lanka as well. So this exposure is definitely helping the young Indian cricketers. So hopefully, in the next 3 years, we see a lot of like to like replacements. So like the thing with Australia women's team is, why they are successful is that if their Elise Perry gets injured, there is always an Annabelle Sutherland, or there is always a Talia Migra, or there is always other at least 10 similar all-rounders waiting to get into that spot. So India is probably not on the scale of 10, but now after the WPL it's on 3 or 4. So you have at least 3 or 4 openers, 3 or 4 all-rounders competing for spots. So as time goes by and the girls get lot more exposure, we'll have a lot of competition for a spot in the Indian women's team, which will be extremely healthy. And that's what the men's IPL has done to the Indian team as well. We have at least 15 top class openers for the opening slot. So you don't perform in one series, you have 15 other people waiting take up your spot. So soon that day will come for the Indian women's cricket team as well, and that is what the IPL is helping, immensely. So we can expect a lot of quality, the next 5 years, and definitely 2 World Cups.
Yes, ma'am. So as you were saying, to have those many kind of players, like top class players, a country should work at the grassroots level. So where do you think India stands right now, like at the grassroots level in women's cricket? Do you think it is still developing, or it's one of the best in the world? What do you say?
It is extremely good for I work at the grassroots level, so I have an actual experience of what actually good. So like compared to the last 4 or 5 years, the number of matches have increased, the facilities have become extremely good, and you have a lot of camps as well for different age categories. For example, the NCA now has opened a new center in Bangalore where the facilities are top class, in par with international standards. And you have some other camp going on. So now the Indian women's team batters are having a camp there. Previously, it was the under 15. Before that, it was the fast bowlers. Again, the under 19 will have a camp. So something or the other is going on. So the facilities and the support system has become too good in India. Just the only thing that can happen more is for India A teams. Probably the Indian team plays a lot of games, but it will be great, like if an India A team consisting of a crop of like potential Indian players, if they can play two countries like Australia, New Zealand, South Africa at least 2 or 3 times every year, then that would be great, because they have nothing like match exposure. So that could actually help us. But the facilities, no complaints at all. They are fantastic.
Yeah, ma'am. One more question I would like to ask is, why aren't we seeing more of test matches being played by women's teams? Like, if you compare it to men's team, like if you see, Indian women's team has played over 41 test matches till date. I mean, yeah, it is still growing, but all of us would like to see women's team playing test match cricket more often than not. So, your take on this? Do you see it growing in the next few years?
Absolutely. The test matches that the Indian women's team has played recently, in the last 3 years, they have been extremely exciting to watch. For women, it's a 4-day game. So the probability of, result might be lesser, but still we have managed to get, a lot of results. See, it's still growing, as you said. So maybe the organizers, they will be the best to, comment on this part. But I definitely see women's test cricket, going ahead by a lot. So we had test matches against, South Africa recently in Chennai last year. So, we see it picking up, but, probably would have to wait another couple of years for the Indian women's team to be playing test matches full fledged. At least, to 50% of of how much they might play.
Yes, ma'am. So this is a more of like a personal question. So your top three young Indian women's cricketers to look out for, like in the future, like emerging. Who do you feel we should watch out for?
It's a tough one because there are a lot of, there is a lot of talent that is, coming through. But on the top of my mind, I would say, someone like G. Kamanini, who was, part of the Mumbai Indians team, and she was also has been very consistent with the Indian under 19 squad. So, she's a very aggressive bat at the top of the order, and her attitude has been extremely impressive as well. With at playing at that level. So I would see her, and apart from that, B. Joshita is one of the cricketers. She's still raw. She was a part of the RCB team. I think she played 2 or 3 matches. She was extremely good in the Indian under 19 team as a new ball bowler. She can swing the ball really well. She has a very smooth action. But she couldn't quite match the WPL level. She will definitely take a couple of years more to get there. But she is someone to watch out for sure. And I had also mentioned about like sorry. So yeah, I was and a couple of Parulika Sisodia is on the top of my mind. A very nice, someone who has really the potential, and also Jeet Trisha, that I would say one of the most impressive performers in the under 19 World Cup. I hope she has she struggled this the year before the under 19 World Cup, but she really stood up and performed for the team, and that was really impressive to watch. And she has extremely good batting technique against spinners. So hopefully she comes up, works her way up, and makes it to the Indian team too. So just to off the beat, these four names came to my mind. Of course, there are a lot of other cricketers as well whom we can see in the next 2, 3 to 4 years. Quality.
Yeah, and this is one question that we have already discussed about. Maybe uh, it could be channelized into a different manner. So you have seen two generations of women's cricket. So you have been yourself a cricketer, and then you're seeing the younger generations coming up and playing. So what do you think is still missing, or something positive that has changed, and what is something that is still missing in women's cricket today?
Okay, so something that I have that has changed really is the approach to the game. So now, previously 10 years back, the approach was like if it's a T20 game, take your time to settle in. The first 6 overs you can just go for 4 or 5 runs pro. That was the case 10 years back, but it's not anymore. You have to make use of the new ball. The first 4 overs you have to go for the power play, go for runs. So even if the first ball is there to be hit, it is being hit now. That approach is extremely refreshing to watch. And when it comes to fielding, also in the Indian team, I would say a lot of youngsters, especially Jemima, Radha Yadav, Pratika Raval, all those people putting in the hard yards, the dives, Harleen Deol also, being extremely athletic in the field. That is something extremely refreshing to watch, from the Indian cricket perspective. And, something to be improved, I would say, off the bat, the thing that comes to my mind is the running between the wickets, to be extremely specific, because, the thing is, if, you hit a boundary in the first ball, then, if you see the English and the way the English and the Australian women cricketers bat, it's a single of every delivery. They take, they make an effort to score a single of each and every delivery. So, and if the ball goes to the outfield, they run the sprint for the first run to create an opportunity for the second run. So, that type of, intensity can be improved for when it comes to the Indian women's cricket team, because, that is something that can convert your 280s into 300s, can convert your 300s into your 320s. So, that, definitely, needs a little bit of work, as far as I'm concerned.
Yes, ma'am. And this question is a little bit hypothetical kind of question.
Okay.
So, do you think we can advocate for a match between the men's Indian cricket team and the women's Indian cricket team like once a year? It will be a nice way to promote women's cricket also, and I think it will be a big success. Like that's my point of view. So, your take on this?
Right. Okay. So I think this proposal had already come in from one of the franchises. I think it was RCB, who I think 4 5 years, not 4 5 years, maybe 2 3 years back, they had advocated a match. Consist of a mixed team, but the BCCA had said no to it, citing injury reasons. So as I said, it might be a marketing initiative. Something like probably uh, an astroturf wicket or maybe a gully cricket match might be a better idea, because when it comes to men and cricketers, as I said, physically they are far different, and the speed of the men cricketers, the women cricketers might not be able to match, and of course you will have a lot of injury concerns as well. So maybe a shorter format like a gully cricket game, or an indoor cricket game where you get to play with a tennis ball on an astroturf. Some that type of promotions will augur better, rather than a full-fledged a T20 or a 50 over, just for safety.
Yeah, ma'am. So what advice would you give to a 12-year-old or a 14-year-old girl aspiring to play cricket for Team India? So what will you tell them? How do they prepare physically and mentally for this challenge?
Yeah. So the first thing I would say is just to enjoy the sport, because everyone, when they first get in, they really want to enjoy the sport. They get into a sport because they really like it, but somehow down the lane, 2 3 years into the sport, the competition stiffens up, and you lose track of the enjoyment. You literally forget why you started playing the game. The first thing would be to just enjoy, and patience. And cricket is something that you don't. So it's not something that you start today and you get into the state team next week. It's months. It's perhaps years of work. So you need to be really patient and persistent. So if you don't come off good in 6 months, you will come off good in 12 months. Maybe not in 12 months. Maybe even in 16 months. But you need to show up every day, and be really patient, and just trust your support staff, your coaches, your SNCs, your nutritionists, whomever you are working with. And another important thing is to have your studies, or if you are into arts, or some other co-curricular, to allot some time for that also, because as I said, you need to have equal amounts of time spent into sport as well as your personal life, because if you are at a stage where too much of cricket can saturate you, or probably you don't achieve your goals that year in cricket, you should have something that you can go back to, spend some time, and then come back fresh, so that you can give your 100% to cricket. So to sum it up, just three things: just enjoy playing the game, be patient, and focus on your studies, and if you have any other co-curriculars, focus on that.
Yeah. And ma'am, like to mention, like I was today coincidentally, I was just scrolling my social media and then I come across a reel where, I see a reel where last year RCB won the finals. So the WPL finals, and then you see the crowd, they are in the bus and the Kaban Park is, the roads are filled, and that's a craze of women's cricket. It's growing as well. And this year we won the under 19 women's world cup as well, so women's cricket is in safe hands. And how are these senior players, like someone like a Mithali Raj or Harmanpreet Kaur or Smriti Mandana, all these people, how have they benefited towards this game, playing at the highest level?
So of course, they are icons of the sport. Because Mithali and Harman, they have been involved in the sport even before the glam days. Even Smriti Mandana for taking her into consideration. So even before the 2017 World Cup, they were willing to put in all the hard yards even when no one was watching. So I think that is the reason why the game has given them these many rewards. After that, because when no one's watching and you work hard, somewhere in the future, you will get benefited. That's how it works when it comes to sport. And having personally interacted with Mithali, Harman, they are always willing to help out cricketers. So as a young cricketer, if you go to them and ask any advice. For example, Mithali Raj was also one of the mentor for the junior Andhra women's cricket team for the previous season. So someone of a caliber as Mithali Raj need not come and mentor such a junior side, but that is some role that she has taken up to improve the women's cricket, the standard of women's cricket in her state. So that is the kind of involvement, the passion that these people have, the capabilities that they have to change how the sport is being played at the grassroots level. And seeing someone like a Smriti bat, like a Harman bat, I see a lot of young cricketers idolizing them, just watching them bat, they learn a lot of things. They just come up to us and say, we want to play like Smriti, we want to play like Harman. So that is the kind of impact that these girls have given to people like even people like cricketers who are still playing, and even the 12, 13 year olds who are aspiring to play for the game. Even Jhulan Goswami is involved with a lot of activity at the grassroots level. Now a lot of states are also coming up with franchise tournaments. So the opportunities are immense, and to see the likes of legends like Jhulan, Mithali, go to the grassroots level and talk to the girls, help them grow up in their careers is extremely important. They are in a position where they can actually advocate change, and be a role model for all the young cricketers, upcoming cricketers. That's working out fantastically, actually.
Well, this brings you to the end of today's episode. Ma'am, it was such an insightful episode. Like, I was thinking as you were speaking, like for every podcast, we make clips, some important or, something interesting to share. Now, I think I'll have to clip every question because it feels really interesting the way you've spoken, the way you've, delivered this podcast to us. Immense gratitude to you for coming to this show and making it such a wonderful. And this is the first time we are talking about women's cricket on this podcast, so it was good, ma'am, hosting me.
Thank you so much, Chirnandan and Maitreya, because it was a fantastic experience. Talking about cricket is always a privilege, and thank you so much. I'm so honored and humbled, for having been here. As the questions were also brilliant. Thank you so much for all your patience. I had missed your message for the first two times, but for thank you so much for your continued patience.